This video is for my fellow trans people, as well as their supportive friends, families, and allies who are early in their transition and wondering what's in store for their first 6 months of hormone replacement therapy. A few weeks ago, I hit my 6-month milestone of being on HRT. I've made 2 previous videos about me coming out and me starting HRT, and I advise you go watch those first just to get a little bit of context. In the starting HRT video, I talk about the process within the UK of going on HRT, especially considering the state of the NHS right now. I think it's a pretty informative video, so go watch that first. Now, if you're planning to start HRT and you're wondering what it does to you in the first few months, or you've just started it and you really want to know what things will look like for you 6 months down the line, I'm going to spend this video talking about exactly that. A lot has changed in my mind and my body over the past 6 months. Not all of it has been good, but I would say that all of it has been positive. Let's talk about it. Also, just a reminder that I had to go private for my HRT, like most trans people in the UK have to, unfortunately, and it is expensive, so if you're a fan of my channel and you love what I do, you can support me on Patreon. I would really appreciate it. The link is in the description. So I started hormone replacement therapy halfway through 2023. As I said in my previous video, I got that HRT through the Gender Hormone Clinic, who are based in London. They have been incredibly supportive. I recently had my 6-month evaluation, which included blood tests, and things are going brilliantly. If you're on the waiting list for the NHS, if you're thinking about going private, the Gender Hormone Clinic is excellent. I cannot recommend their services enough. First off, let's talk about the changes that I experienced over the past 6 months. Changes to my mind, to my temper, to my mood, and to my body. The first thing that you'll notice, and I think I brought this up in my video 6 months ago, is that the changes to your mood happen almost immediately. The day you start taking estrogen, you will notice a shift in your mood. Now obviously here I cannot speak to the experiences of trans men, but I do have trans masculine friends who have said similar things. Their moods changed very quickly. A lot of changes happen pretty quickly, especially with testosterone as far as I understand it. It's a pretty powerful thing. For me, taking estrogen, I started on 1 milligram of estradiol every day in gel form. I rub the gel on my skin before I go to bed and that's it. And within 2 to 3 days, I noticed that my mood was shifting. It was so easy for me to cry suddenly. I remember 3 or 4 days after starting HRT, I went for a run in the local park. I was listening to a heavy metal song about depression and anxiety, and I started crying whilst jogging. It was a very memorable moment. I'd heard that song 1,000 times. It was on my running playlist. I heard it constantly. But it made me cry once I started HRT, and that is a normal thing for me now. I cry a lot more when I watch films, read books, and listen to music. Music especially, because music plucks at your heartstrings better than any other art form does, in my opinion, and it will make me cry very easily. That is a change I really enjoy. I've always been a very emotional person, but being in touch with your emotions and being able to physically express them are very different things. I've always understood my own feelings and I feel a lot. I ride the spectrum of emotions very freely and very unapologetically, but now I express them more easily, especially when it comes to crying, and it's a huge relief. It's very cathartic and I appreciate it. And then came the mood swings. I noticed within the first month or 2 that my mood would shift quite easily. Once you're on estrogen, you are more predisposed to depression. It's quite easy to fall into a funk and sit there trapped in it. Now, I've spent my entire life being predisposed to depression. I've had depressive episodes in the past, so I'm no stranger to them. But it feels like the mood swings that I experience swing me towards depression at the drop of a hat. So you have to really be careful, regulate your mood as best you can with things like exercise and a good diet. I run 10k every other day and I think it really helps stabilize my mood. As for the physical changes, I think for a lot of trans people that's what we're most looking forward to. I really wanted my face to change. I've never had a particularly masculine face and I would often pass before I started hormones. Passing is a weird and complicated thing, but I think you you know what I mean when I say that. But I was still looking forward to my face softening, my skin softening as well. And that has happened a little bit, and I'm looking forward to it continuing. There is more fat in my face now. It has rounded out slightly, and my skin is so much softer all over my body. I have the softest skin now. That change happened quite quickly, but actually at the 6-month mark, it has escalated even more. My skin is so soft and smooth. It's lovely. But the very first physical change that I noticed was my hair. Now, when I started HRT, I already had long hair. I was lucky enough to be in that percentage of people assigned male at birth who weren't gonna go bald. I've always had loads and loads of hair. My dad has loads and loads of hair. His dad has plenty of hair, and he's 85-ish, I think. I don't know, he's an asshole. That said, my hair was still changing. It is much curlier now than it used to be. My hair has always just been straight and brown and pretty ordinary, but now it's all wavy and curly. I don't do this. I woke up today, I had a shower, I put on some dry shampoo, I didn't wash it, and this is what it looks like. It's got curls, it's got kinks, it's got volume and texture. I didn't do that. This is just how my hair is. I don't do anything to it except brush it. And it's lovely. It wasn't like this before. That was the first physical change that I noticed, and it happened within the first month or two. That was a really quick change. My hair also seems to grow a little faster now. I get it cut, and it's back to how it was. I actually got a haircut around Christmas that I absolutely hated, but by now in February I've forgotten it happened. Now the big change that happens when it comes to HRT is fat distribution around your body. People who are assigned male or female at birth have different areas of their body that fat kind of gravitates towards. Long before I even came out and my egg cracked, I used to make jokes about the fact that I had very feminine hips. I've always carried a lot of extra weight, my family is fat. I'm pretty fit and healthy, but I am still fat. I've been fat my whole life. And a lot of that fat was stored in my hips. It always has been. And as I mentioned in my previous video, when I got my blood tests done, I found out that I had twice as much estrogen as the maximum amount for someone assigned male at birth. So I've always had a strangely high amount of estrogen, and that has affected where my body fat has sat. That was a lovely thing to find out. I was really comforted by that. The fact that I've always been absolutely full of estrogen means that I've always felt very feminine, and being trans suddenly felt very, very natural. Being trans is natural, but again, I think you know what I'm saying here. Now, when it comes to fat distribution for trans people, one of the first places you'll notice fat redistribute itself to is your chest. You will start to grow breasts. I have grown breasts. I am a B-cup now. That is kind of wild. Again, I've always carried extra weight, so I've always had extra fat in my chest, but breast tissue and fat feel different, and now I have a lot of breast tissue. When I first started transitioning, I was wearing padded bralettes, but now I just wear regular bras. And it's pretty impressive how quickly my breasts have grown. It's amazing, actually. They're a really decent size, and I didn't expect that to happen within the first 6 months. It usually doesn't. It usually takes 1 to 2 years to really see a decent amount of breast growth. I think with a lot of areas of transition, I've been one of the lucky ones. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. But this is one area in which I'm one of the lucky ones. I grew titties real fast. Good for me. As I said, I also have noticed an increase in fat in my hips. My hips are now pretty massive, and my face has smoothed out very slightly, but I'm hoping for more. We'll see. Time will tell. I don't really want to get any facial feminization surgeries, so I'm really hoping that HRT does the job. Another thing that changes a lot is your body hair. Now, body hair and facial hair play by different rules, unfortunately. I had a lot of laser hair removal sessions on my face over the course of about a year, 18 months, and it got rid of most of the hair on my face. Recently, I've had to go back and get a few top-up sessions, which is annoying, and it's probably something I'll always have to do. I'm pretty sure that's just how it is. HRT will not stop facial hair from growing entirely. It does soften it slightly, makes it less harsh and coarse, but it will never go away. So you do have to get it lasered off. It's an unfortunate and painful reality, and I do not enjoy it. Smelling your own hair burning is not nice. But when it comes to body hair, and I'm talking neck down all the way, hair does change. The hair on my arms and legs has softened, it's become finer, it's much less coarse and harsh than it was. Typically, at least amongst white people, and at least in my experience, men's and women's body hair is slightly different. Men tend to have darker and coarser hair, but again, We're all different, we're all beautiful, we're all diverse, and what I'm saying here does not apply to everyone. And I'm glad it doesn't, because diversity is gorgeous. But I have noticed that my hair has softened. I sometimes stroke the hair on my arms and notice that it's so much finer and softer now. And that's lovely. One thing that I don't see a lot of people talk about, but I'm happy to discuss it here, is the trans sex drive. I was chatting to a trans masculine friend of mine. He's been out for a long time. He's very deep into his transition. And one day he was talking about how when he first started taking testosterone, his sex drive hit the roof. He and his boyfriend, who is also a trans guy, they could not stop going at it because suddenly they both had these enormous sex drives. For me, the opposite is true. My sex drive has diminished a lot. Nothing has changed in terms of performance or in terms of how much I enjoy it, but how much I want it and crave it has definitely dropped. It's a sad reality for trans women, and it doesn't apply to all of us, but if you love sex, and I love sex, be prepared for the fact that suddenly you just won't crave it as much as you did before. If you're on the ace spectrum, great, good for you. Nothing changes, I guess. But for me, I like sex, and I just don't crave it like I used to. I haven't started taking progesterone yet, and I'll talk about that more in a second, but as far as I understand, progesterone does jolt it back up a little bit. We'll see. So those are all the big changes. Skin, hair, body fat, mood has changed, I cry more easily. And as I said, not all of these changes are good, because not all of us want our mood to suddenly become unpredictable. The idea that you can suddenly become depressed a lot more easily, that's scary, and yeah, it is. I feel it. But these changes are all positive, because I feel more myself. I feel more true to myself. HRT for me has kind of unlocked me. I feel like I'm in my true form, like something was always holding me back, like I was born with a girdle around me, I was born in shackles, I was born with a cage around my brain. Something wasn't quite right. Now I feel naked and true and honest. I feel liberated. I feel free. HRT has unlocked and released the version of me that was always supposed to exist. And that comes with the mood swings and the potential for depression. I feel more honestly me. And that's really incredible. I need to write a poem about this. I just feel more true, more honest. It is wonderfully liberating. Now I want to explain the process. In my previous video, I talked a lot about the process leading up to starting HRT. I talked all about the blood tests I had to get, the psychological evaluation, the meetings I had with the people at the gender hormone clinic, how much money it cost, the NHS waiting list. I went through all of that. So go watch all of that in that video if you haven't already. Here's what happened at my 6-month checkup. I started taking 1 milligram of estrogen every day. At the 3-month mark, that went up to 1.5, where I'd have half a sachet of estradiol gel, and I'd have to try and squeeze out that half as best I could, and then rub it on my thighs, and then it was a bit of a pain. At the 6-month mark, I needed an appointment, but before the appointment, I had to get a new blood test done to show how my estrogen and testosterone levels had changed. Now, I talked about how my estrogen before I started HRT was enormously high already, and my testosterone was really low. My testosterone levels before I started taking estrogen were the lowest that someone assigned male at birth could possibly be, which is really cool. And my estrogen was enormously high for someone assigned male at birth. Still not as high as your average AFAB, but much higher than your average AMAB. So my estrogen is sort of floating in space, leaning towards the feminine. So what's it like after 6 months? Well, it's different for everyone, and it'll be different for you. For me, my estrogen levels are right on the cusp right now of what is considered normal for someone assigned female at birth. And my testosterone levels are also right on the cusp of what's expected for someone assigned female at birth. Whatever your gender, whatever you were born as, we all have estrogen and testosterone in our bodies. But if you imagine 2 spectrums of estrogen and testosterone, there's an area for estrogen and testosterone for a woman and an area for estrogen and testosterone for a man. And right now I am sitting on the edge of what's ideal for estrogen and testosterone in a woman. That's great. That's amazing. It's perfect. In fact, and I'm pretty sure I brought this up in my last video, 30% of trans femmes who take estrogen do not require testosterone blockers. T blockers are something that typically get introduced into your transgender journey a few months in after you've been on estrogen for a while, and I kind of hoped I didn't have to take T blockers. As I said, 30% don't, because T blockers are typically injected. You have to go visit your GP and they inject you once every 3 months, or sometimes it's monthly. And I don't want to do that. I don't like needles. I know I'm covered in tattoos, but it's different. I don't like needles. Getting the blood test is bad enough. But it turns out I'm in that 30%. My testosterone levels are so low now that they are within the range of a typical woman, and so I do not need T blockers. I will never need T blockers. That is awesome. But the unfortunate reality is that 70% of trans women do need T blockers. So it's statistically likely that if you're watching this because you're a few months behind me in your journey, you will need T blockers. That's just the stats. You might get lucky like me, and you might not care. You might not give a shit. You might be looking forward to T blockers, but I don't need them, and I'm really relieved. That's what my blood tests revealed, and I was really, really happy with that. We talked about all the different changes and how I've been feeling, and we eventually talked about progesterone. Progesterone is something that will be added in after a year. Different clinics and physicians and endocrinologists do things differently. My previous video has done pretty well, and I've had a lot of Americans telling me how wonderful their healthcare system is, which, like, I honestly didn't think a single sensible American actually thought their healthcare system was good, but one of them asked me, why didn't you get estradiol, progesterone, and T-blockers all at once? I can't answer that because I'm not an endocrinologist, but that's how it worked for me. Everything has been gradual, everything has been a step-by-step process that's been carefully monitored. Seems pretty sensible to me, especially considering I don't even need T-blockers. Now, estradiol or estrogen and progesterone are the two hormones that swim around in women's bodies, and progesterone is the next one to get added to my cocktail. But, as I was told, progesterone is kind of optional. It doesn't do a lot. Estrogen's the main one. Progesterone actually helps with breast growth and mood regulation. So like with T-blockers, we're going to revisit this in 6 months and see if I need progesterone or if I want it, because it kind of is optional. I don't see any reason to not take it, except for the fact that apparently it can make you quite drowsy, but we'll see. Now, I talked in my last video about this whole process, about the bureaucracy of it and also the cost of it. Because the reality is, in the UK right now, the NHS waiting list for hormone replacement therapy for trans people is enormous. Depending on where you are and who you talk to and what statistics you read, the waiting list can be 10 to 15, maybe 20 years long. It's ludicrous. And most of us end up going private. As I've said, private healthcare is expensive, and it's not the norm for British people. The situation for me is that I spend £50 a month for the gender hormone clinic to provide me with my estrogen, as well as my blood tests, my follow-up appointments, all of that stuff. It's £50 a month, and that's a lot of money. On top of that, I had an issue with a GP a few months ago. When I was living in London, my GP told me that she refused to offer me what's called shared care. Shared care just means that your private clinic provides you with everything. And all your GP does is sign off on you receiving your hormones as a prescription via them rather than a private prescription. Because if you have to take a private prescription, you've got your £50 a month and £30 on top of that just to receive your box of hormones from a pharmacy. And I had to pay that extra £30 because my GP in London refused shared care. She simply said that she didn't understand hormones. She didn't understand the process. These hormones are taken more by perimenopausal cis women than they are by trans women. If she doesn't understand that, she shouldn't be a GP. But that was her excuse. I'm gonna call transphobia on that, and I'm still upset about it, but I have no proof. Regardless, she denied me shared care. If your GP in England does provide you shared care, which they should, that prescription goes down from £30 for every time you need more hormones to £9, because £9 is how much prescriptions cost in England. Now, in the last 6 months, I've moved up to Scotland, where prescriptions are free. The NHS here is much better funded and in much better condition. I love living in Scotland, I'm proud of it, and I don't think I'll ever leave. I will fight for Scottish independence. I adore this country, and I love its people. I love everything about Scotland. I'm so proud to be living here. And an extra bonus for Scotland and Wales is that all prescriptions are totally free. My new GP here in Glasgow immediately provided me shared care. I explained my situation, I explained that I'm trans and I take hormones, and he said, yeah, cool, no problem, job done. There you go, shared care. Easy. That's how it should be. A GP actually looking after their patients. Nice and simple, a bit of humanity, thank you. So that means my prescription should have gone down from 30 to 9, but because I'm in Scotland, it went down from 30 to free. So I am very lucky in that regard. Anyone based in Wales or Scotland will be lucky in that regard. So right now I pay the £50 a month and that is it. Again, your support on Patreon would really help with that. But obviously only do it if you love my channel and you love what I do and you think I'm good at it. Don't throw me money out of pity, please. I like to feel like I earn my Patreon money by doing the best job I can on this channel, typically reviewing books. So that's kind of the financial situation for trans people in the UK who have to go private. As I said, being trans has unlocked my true self. I feel in control of my mind and I feel like my body looks like it's supposed to look. I wake up and I am me. And that's amazing, and I will gladly pay for that. I actually did write a poem about that. So there you go. 6 months down the line, my body looks different. My brain feels different. My hormones are balanced the way that they should be. I don't need to take T blockers. And I'll probably make another video 6 months from now talking about taking progesterone or how much bigger my titties have gotten. I don't know, we'll see. I really hope that this has helped trans people who are about to start HRT or have just started HRT and are wondering. Obviously, this is entirely from the trans feminine perspective. I'm sorry I can't offer any insight into trans masculine people, but we are a wonderful community and there is so much help out there online. And you've probably got trans friends in your local area as well. Despite political pressures, despite all of the terrible laws that are being written to eradicate us, it's actually a really nice time socially to be trans because we are a bigger and stronger and more well-connected community than we've ever been. That is a huge positive. Right now, being trans is terrifying. We are literally being killed. But the flip side to that is that we are very strong together. We have a network. And I talk to fellow trans people online and in person every single day because I love our community. So if you have more questions, obviously ask in the comments, but also reach out on social media. Go to some meetups if you can. The trans community is great and it is diverse and it is beautiful. And so is Scotland. I bloody love living here. Oh, actually, there is one more thing I forgot to mention. Voice. Testosterone changes your voice. Your voice will break if you're on testosterone. Estrogen doesn't do that. Breaking your voice is an irreversible process. So you have to have voice lessons to raise your voice. And you can get those for free online, but you can also get them in person or over video chat, blah, blah, blah. It's expensive and I haven't done it. I go back and forth on how I feel about my voice as a trans woman. I know that it's a masculine voice, but I also kind of don't mind it. Some days I do. Some days it gives me real dysphoria. Other days I really don't think about it at all. My voice isn't a big part of my life. And also, I get a lot of compliments for my voice on this channel. People love the way my voice sounds. I recorded an audiobook, and I'm very proud of that. So I don't know if I'll ever change my voice. What I do know is I've struggled to try by myself, even watching YouTube videos, so I'd probably need a private mentor, and that's expensive again. So I'm not ready to do that yet. We'll see. Trans guys, you're lucky. Testosterone will just drop your voice and you're done. It's real fast. You can see loads of videos on TikTok of people just listening to their own voice drop month by month on testosterone. It's really, really cool and I'm very impressed. We don't get that. It's a shame, but at the same time, I really don't hate my voice. So that's one thing I go back and forth on. I'll stop now. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you've got any questions. Transphobes will be reported and blocked, blah, blah, blah. Subscribe for books.